3.5 hours of intense sessions where we have discussed a host of issues from bilateral relations to multilateral relations to India and Argentina's role in the New World Order. And of course, several ideas have come up today in this 3 hours of discussion among the experts, think tank people, academia. And if I start from agriculture, traditional sectors of exports, rule-based multilateralism, technology of all kinds, including artificial intelligence, climate change, exports, labor markets. There are a whole lot of issues which have come up for discussion today. And I think there's a lot to ponder over for all of us after the program and continue to have this discussion for a much longer period. But at this point of time, I would request, in fact, let me say this, that I have the honor to have both the foreign ministers participating in today's program. And I'm going to change the order at this point of time and request the foreign minister of Argentina to speak first. And Mr. Sola, the present foreign minister of Argentina, is a career politician. And he has been governor of Buenos Aires province, which is the most important, largest province in Argentina. He's had several other government positions throughout his career. And very interestingly, he also has had the experience of private sector, which is a common thread between the two foreign ministers, of course. Both have had a small stint in private sector. At this stage, at this point of time, I would like to invite Foreign Minister of Argentina, Excellency Mr. Felipe Sola, to make his remarks.
Jaishankar. Quiero agradecer especialmente la oportunidad de estar frente a ustedes, originada en la invitación del CIPEC, en la persona de su directora, Julia Pomares, y aprovechar la oportunidad frente a mi colega de la India, el señor ministro de Asuntos Exteriores, Jaishankar, a quien saludo muy especialmente. De la misma manera, saludo también a Dinesh Bhatia, el embajador de la India en la Argentina, y a todos ustedes, a todos los presentes, a los que han disertado antes que nosotros y a todos los que están en línea en este momento. La India y la Argentina tienen una historia de admiración y afecto por parte de nuestro país hacia esa cultura milenaria. Por otra parte, la India, además de ser una cultura milenaria, es una potencia mundial.
House, the sixth regarding GDP, in global GDP, and their level of growth is very high, normally or usually linked to knowledge. We have a shared history, important history, because the decolonization process of India resulted in anti-colonialism and global decolonization during the 50s and the 60s, which changed the world. And the idea that brought us together, as from 1949, when General Perón began diplomatic relations with India, were mainly two. Was the third position vis-a-vis the countries, the peoples that then engaged in this Cold War. I mean, communism versus capitalism. I mean, capitalism led by the US. And also this third position and the non-alignment as a foreign policy. This led to the third world, non-alignment, the third position. These things became sort of the same thing, and India was a leader in this regard. First, the struggle by Mahatma Gandhi and what that meant. And his sacrifice, and his impressive legacy to the rest of the world, to every country, and that influence on decolonization. Secondly, Pandit Nehru was one of the leaders, maybe one of the most relevant leaders of non-alignment, and from him we have taken many ideas. From the point of view of culture, given the huge millennium cultural wealth, Ricardo Rojas, an Argentinian writer who wrote The Saint of the Sword, I mean, that's San Martin, Ricardo Guiraldes, the writer of Don Segundo Sombra, Victorio Campo, another writer, and Jorge Luis Borges, another writer, came close to India and traveled, especially Ricardo Guiraldes, traveled to India and took from the Indian culture very remarkable elements that they introduced into their literature, into their works. Victoria Ocampo, as we see in her pictures, is seen in Argentina side by side with Rabindranath Tagore, and Jorge Luis Borges wrote a short story influenced by Tagore's presence, and he established some similarities between River Plate and the Ganges Delta. This Hinduism, or all the Indian attractiveness, has been present in all of our cultural relationships and links. And I think I have mentioned culture and I have mentioned politics. That's because they are very strong links, very important to be taken into account when we envisage the future with other countries, with another power, which keeps growing and might become the first world on the planet regarding population. India is also an example of a sustained democracy, a nation with many different ethnic groups, many different languages, different ways of thinking, and they all live together side by side. I'm not saying that they don't have problems, but they can live happily within this huge territory. Development, nuclear development, the development of the pharma industry, energy industry, the development of knowledge industry is all related to our incipient development in these realms. And there are some points I would like to underscore, which I find very interesting. I don't want to forget to mention that the award given to Raúl Prebisch, the first economist in Argentina, who very profusely wrote many articles and books, spoke about industrialism, state intervention in the economy, upheld the difference between terms of trade as key issues back in the 60s. And The Economist was given an award, a Nehru Award, because of India, yeah? That's the reason for the name. And the name was Jawaharlal Nehru Award for International Understanding. And that award was given to conceptual work written by Raúl Prebisch. So it's good to remember the legacy, his ideas, which remain alive. And India has supported this. We have shared legacies after 71 years of diplomatic relations, and of course, more years of general relations. We have social, political, cultural legacies and links left down by extraordinary men and women. And I would like to mention some of these legacies. First, both countries have an engagement to deepen dialogue within the UN system, to strengthen multilateral bodies which have been gone under questioning recently. We hope this is over in the near future in this complex world. We have a strong desire to tackle global challenges resorting to multilateralism, and we want to reflect the interest of both countries regarding multilateral agendas. We have worked in favor of decolonization around the world, and India has traditionally supported Argentina's claims against the UK regarding the Falklands Islands, the Malvinas Islands, regarding negotiations regarding sovereignty on these islands, as well as the Georgia Islands and the Southern Sandwich, as well as the maritime areas. India has always supported Argentina's position within the Decolonization Commission and the UN General Assembly. Also, as countries member of the G20, we have tried to find consensus positions. We have tried to get international funding for infrastructure works. And we want these infrastructure works, we create a lot of labor. You know, this should be a form, a way to have a contra-cyclical impact on the economies that were under stress. And both countries agree that this international funding is fundamental as an economic counter-cyclical measure. We agree that within the G20, and India has supported us. We also share the idea that the state should play an active role. The discussion of the limits on this active role has to do who produces, who exports, who imports. Well, the private sector. So what should we do? We should help the private sector and sometimes regulate so that competition is as healthy as possible, so that no one needs damage. Consumers especially, we should also regulate the financial sector. And India has also given support to us in this regard. We have gambled on the development of traditional sectors, car making, pharma, agribusiness in Argentina, but we promote with India space, nuclear technology, and knowledge technologies, as I said, and we both have highly skilled human resources. That's why we have entered into strategic alliance for 1 year. That means we look the future in a similar way, and we consider each other quite similar regarding the future. This future. We have had political consultation meetings, quite a few meetings throughout the years. The last, this October, on the 20th, there was 30 years of political meetings. The peaceful use of nuclear energy, that's another key topic. We have a mixed committee for the implementation of the framework agreement. We signed it in 2010, and INVAP has joint projects for a molybdenum plant in Mumbai. We have space cooperation between the Argentine and the Indian space agencies, and we have signed agreements. We cooperate in animal biotechnology, and we will put in motion the Indo-Argentine excellence for IT technology. So, trade has increased, but it's quite low, around $2 billion. And we have a surplus, mainly based on our soybean exports. And we have to change. We have to diversify. Diversification is the name of the game regarding product and goods. There are Indian companies in Argentina, around a dozen. Agrochemistry, bicycles, cosmetics, IT services, financial analysis. There are IT companies, construction and pharma companies from Argentina located in India, working in India. So we have the foundations, and we have some affinity. Affinity is a combination of admiration, equality, respect, and affection, respect of the culture and the history. And we have these foundations on which we can improve and deepen our bilateral relationships and diversify our exports. And we have to accept a change in Chinese imports, because, you know, we cannot use the hands to push imports and receive exports. So it's a tit for tat. South-South cooperation and relations will be benefited by increasing the strength of our relationships. No doubt about that. And also, I would like to add, regarding the farming sector, agriculture, we have an interest in agro-technological cooperation, including transfer based on Argentinian know-how, extensive crops and farming, and the possibility that Argentinian experts might develop in India one of the most developed agricultures, like Argentina, like the Pampas, especially extensive crops. In Argentina, we have the 8th unconventional oil field and the 2nd for gas, and the 3rd biggest lithium reserve in the world, 750,000 square kilometers of high performance and high potential areas, especially related to solar energy in the Cuyan area. And this has to be a key element for the settlement of Indian firms in Argentina. We have a great export base for technological goods, from India to Latin America, and we can be the hub for India to export to the rest of Latin America. And so you have capital, IT, car parts, steel, food. We have detected markets, and India can export to these countries through Argentina, which is good for both of us. In order to make progress in these goals, towards these goals, what I call this mutual legacy, affinity, familiarity, that's fundamental. We have just made a decision regarding the embassy in India, and we are expecting a lot from the new embassy. Mr. Hugo Gobi, His Excellency Hugo Gobi. He has lots of experience coming from Australia, so he comes from Australia to New Delhi. So I would like to wrap up by saying thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this event, because we are speaking about a country with a lot of history and with a big, big future. Yeah, a country famous for its spirituality, customs, habits, and also because it's a nuclear power. I would like to thank my colleague, the External Affairs Minister of India. I would like to thank CPEC, Ines Bhatia especially, and a friend. And I would like to say that we take into account, we fully take into account everything I have just said. We have lots of different paths ahead in order to increase Argentinian exports, in order for these exports to be based on human resources, in order to attain the growth of knowledge economy. And for us, Argentina is key. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency Foreign Minister of Argentina, Mr. Sola. Thank you for the overview that you have given about India-Argentine relations, which started even before India became an independent country. And of course, you talked about knowledge economy. You talked about, you of course traced the entire history of relations between India and Argentina. And you also mentioned diversification of trade, which I think is on the agenda of both countries. And both countries are striving to do that, to diversify trade. But of course, trade as such has been doing rather well. In the year 2019-20, India-Argentina bilateral trade touched a new peak of $3.09 billion US. And of course, 3/4 of this amount was Argentina's export to India, and 1/4 was approximately India's exports to Argentina. The good news is that in spite of the lockdown due to the pandemic, which started in both the countries in the month of March, the trade between both the countries has continued to go up. And if I look at the figures of the first 9 months of 2020, the trade has gone up by more than 11%. And this is very notable because the trade in general globally, and in particular for Argentina, has fallen. But with India, Argentina has continued to grow in terms of trade, whether it's export as well as imports. So these are very positive signals between, as far as the relationship between India and Argentina is concerned. I would also like to mention, before I invite the Foreign Minister of India, that the relationship is very special, and the Prime Minister of India took a special exception to tweet to congratulate on the victory of President Alberto Fernandez last year after the elections in October 2019 in Argentina. And President Alberto Fernandez was prompt enough to respond immediately on the Twitter, and a relationship thus was established, though they have not met personally, and I hope that they meet as soon as possible. From here, I would like to move on to invite the Foreign Minister of India, His Excellency Mr. Dr. Jaishankar. Dr. Jaishankar has had a distinguished and exemplary career in diplomatic service of India, Indian Foreign Service. And he took over as the Foreign Minister of India in 2019 after the second term of Prime Minister Modi was mandated by the people of India. Dr. Jaishankar has served as ambassador to various countries, including US, China, Singapore, and Czech Republic, besides having done other assignments in various foreign countries. I request Excellency Dr. Jaishankar to make his remarks.
Colleagues, participants, and friends, let me begin by commending the efforts of all the institutions that have participated in today's event, led by RIS on the Indian side and CIPPEC on the Argentine side. A shared space for our leading think tanks to deliberate upon the current status and future of the relations between our two friendly nations is indeed a welcome initiative. In today's discussions, we have heard an exhaustive analysis of the current status of the bilateral relationship between the two strategic partners, as well as the roles envisaged for them in the new world order. Our ties are based on common principles and values of democracy, freedom, and rule of law, and respect for territorial integrity, as well as a shared openness to new thoughts and ideas. Over the 7 decades of our cooperation, there has been an increasing awareness of our similarities, as well as the need to engage more deeply. Recent years have witnessed a notable upswing in high-level interactions and considerable progress across several sectors. As vibrant democracies, we have also nurtured strong bonds of friendship between our parliaments. In 2019, the bilateral cooperation was elevated to a strategic partnership when we also commemorated 70 years of our diplomatic relationship. In the last 10 years, we have witnessed bilateral trade more than doubling to over $3 billion. This trend continued this year, undeterred by the pandemic and its consequent disruptions. The robust economic relationship is further bolstered by the presence of several Indian companies in Argentina and vice versa in India. I'm happy to note that the Joint Trade Committee held a meeting last month after a gap of almost 3 decades. The recent formation of an India-Argentina Business Council in Buenos Aires is a commendable initiative. However, there remains unexplored complementarities and untapped potential for increasing engagement in fields like agriculture, mining and minerals, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and automotives. Our countries are agricultural powerhouses in their respective regions. Our cooperation in this area can extend beyond increasing exports and market access to each other's products to collaboration in edible oils, agricultural machinery, and fertilizers. Argentina can indeed be an important partner for India's energy security, especially in the oil and gas sector. With Argentina joining the International Solar Alliance in 2019, an important first step was taken for cooperation in renewable energy. Large reserves of minerals, including lithium in Argentina, complements the large appetite for metals and minerals across various sectors in India, including crucial ones like e-vehicles. The health and pharmaceutical sector has come in the spotlight recently in the context of the pandemic. As the pharmacy of the world, India was able to provide assured supplies of high-quality pharma products in difficult circumstances, in addition to giving life-saving medicines and protective gear to around 150 countries, 27 of them in Latin America and the Caribbean region. While India granted special exemptions to Argentina on exports of hydrochloroquine and paracetamol, Argentina in turn reciprocated by allowing the export of ventilators to India. Another sector which came into focus during the pandemic is the IT sector, an area where India has demonstrated its expertise, including in the large-scale use of ICT applications for governance and promoting inclusive growth. This is an area with tremendous potential for collaboration, in the light of the focus on virtual interactions in the digitization of work. Cultural contacts and people-to-people linkages between our countries go back to the last century. I'm aware that the people of Argentina have great admiration for Indian culture, philosophy, and spirituality. Argentina also holds a special place in India's collective cultural consciousness. Records indicate the presence of an Indian community in the province of Jujuy in northern Argentina as early as 1870s. The visit of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore in 1924 and his connections to Argentina are well known. Interest in Indian culture and philosophy has been further promoted by the work of Argentine Indologists such as Ms. Maria Rene Cura and Dr. Fernando Tola. The presence of the highest per capita yoga practitioners and a plethora of yoga schools in Argentina is a statement in itself. Our nations cooperate in a number of multilateral and international fora, from the United Nations to G20 and the WTO. We share values and common interests on global issues ranging from terrorism, climate change, sustainable development, non-aligned movement, women's issues, human rights, and non-proliferation. It is noteworthy that Argentina has issued a special declaration to fight terrorism with India in 2019, the only country in the region to do so. We are among the founding members of G20 and are strong believers of South-South cooperation with a shared interest in reform of the multilateral bodies. Excellencies and friends, we are living through an unprecedented and devastating global crisis created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Even as countries continue to grapple with its health, economic, and other effects, a world order already in transition has been further complicated. We believe that cooperation and not competition should be the basis of international relations. Our response to the current global uncertainty is reflected in the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India, articulated by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is a vision of a self-reliant India which is also a reliable friend for the world. It highlights collaboration and complementarities in an environment of global recovery and reform. It envisages the harmonizing of domestic production and consumption with global supply chains, as well as promotion of international trade and commerce. Argentina can truly be an important partner for India with its abundant agricultural production, reserves of strategic minerals, large energy resources, and growing innovation. Our countries must explore increasing bilateral trade and economic collaboration. This will make us a more important player in the availability of goods and services and in the flow of talent. Next year, India will begin its tenure as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. We will continue to speak for the developing world and the global South, as well as the values and ideas we ourselves represent. In the larger global perspective, our countries must continue to champion multipolarity and reform multilateralism for a rules-based and transparent world order. Let me conclude by thanking RIS, CIPPEC, and the Embassy of India in Argentina for hosting this event. I applaud the efforts by the organizers to undertake this digital interaction. It shows how well we have adjusted to this changing world. My best wishes to Foreign Minister Sola, whom I hope to meet in person at the